Welcome to the Everything Podcast, and in this episode, I'll be recapping Not Going Out, Series 14, Episode 5, titled Dragon Castle, which was originally released on the 13th of June 2025, and I'm recording this episode just under a month later on the 8th of July 2025. Before I get on with my recap, here is the Not Going Out, Series 14 trailer.
All our kids have gone off to uni, so it's time for the next chapter.
I was just paying tribute to the greatest band of all time.
Which, to be fair, is what Oasis do.
We need someone with no acting experience at all. Hello. You're quite odd, aren't you? Should see what's under my gloves. You messed up getting the tickets.
I'm sorry.
Apology accepted. I don't mind being shot from behind. Don't
Tempt me.
That was the trailer for Not Going Out, Series 14. So without further ado, here is my recap of Not Going Out, Series 14, Episode 5, titled Dragon Castle. The director asks everyone to stand in their first positions. Lee compliments Lucy's outfit whilst insulting his and mentioning Chris Evans. We then have the Not Going Out title sequence. Someone, and actually I've read that wrong, something seems to be getting filmed. Lee and Lucy are within this project. The director yells at Lee. Lee apologises to the director. Suki reminds Lee what his role is. Lucy reveals how she and Lee got to be extras on this project. Lee has given his character a name and backstory, which he shares to Lucy, Suki and the director. The director corrects Lee. An actor mentions the Royal Shakespeare Company. Suki informs Lee of some rules. Lucy corrects Lee. Lee mentions Carol Vorderman. Lee disagrees with Lucy's current theory. Lee mentions George Lucas and Harrison Ford. Lucy mentions Jesus. Lee insults acting whilst mentioning Robbie Williams' biopic. Lee reveals the nickname of one of the actors he and Lucy are working with. Lee mentions Sister Act the musical. Lucy mentions professionalism. Lucy gets starstruck by one of the actors. Lucy apologises to this actor. This actor agrees to have a selfie with Lucy. This actor informs Lee of one of the TV shows he's been in. The actor insults Lee's nose. Suki reminds Lee of his role in the current scene. Suki seems to lie to Lee. Lucy mentions Daniel Day-Lewis. Suki reveals extras don't get credits. Lee convinces Suki to let him have Lucy's named role. Lucy swears at Lee. Lee spends way too much time in the background of the scene. Suki shelves Lee. Suki allows Lucy to stay in this current scene. An actor agrees to interact with Lucy during a scene. This episode's title is The Project Being Shot. Lee still finds his way into the scene. One of the actors swears whilst mentioning Wallace and Gromit. Suki asks Lee to leave the building. An actor compliments Lucy. Lee swears. Lucy compliments this actor. Lucy believes Dragon Castle could be her big break. Lee reveals his issues with this. Suki escorts Lee out of the building. Lee steals some food. Lee catches one of the actors drinking. This actor convinces Lee to keep this a secret. Brian reveals his issues with the current scene. One of the other actors defends this scene whilst reminding Brian of the plot of Dragon Castle. Brian mentions drama school. Lee returns. Brian insults Lee's face. Lee informs the director that he knows the lines. Lee asks Suki to tell Lucy not to talk to him directly, similar to what Brian said to him earlier. Lucy attempts to prove a point to Lee. The director and one of the actors remind Lee of his actions in Q Line. Lee gets the scene wrong multiple times. Lee's phone rings. Lee gets his one line wrong over and over again. One of the actors insults Lee. Lee mentions drink driving. Lee catches Brian drinking again. Lee mentions Harrison Ford. Lee attempts to convince Brian to continue filming Dragon Castle. Brian mentions one of his previous jobs. The director warns all the actors, including Lee, about this being the final take of this scene. Lee finally gets his scene right. One of the actors learns that Lee and Lucy are married. This actor insults Lee. Brian insults the other actors. Brian mentions some of his previous mistakes. Brian throws himself off the stage. The director compliments Brian. The director insults the audience of Dragon Castle. And the director thanks Lee whilst giving him a job. And that is my recap of Not Going Out, Series 14, Episode 5, titled Dragon Castle. And Not Going Out will return for the Series 14 finale, Series 14, Episode 6, titled Hotel Room, or my recap of it rather, as it's already had. But back to this episode. Let me know what you thought of Not Going Out, Series 14, Episode 5, Dragon Castle, if you watched it. My recap, if you didn't, you can put your thoughts on both of those in the comments below. As well as anything else from the channel, such as any previews or recaps, put those in the comments below as well. Remember, you can also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in a future episode of the podcast. And just before I go, just to remind that there are now 2 episodes of the podcast every single day, with the first episode releasing at 11 a.m. GMT and the second episode releasing at 3 p.m. GMT. Without further ado, that's it for this episode of the Everything Podcast. Goodbye.